Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is To Back or Not To Back. I have missed you all. Granted, I do a video every single day, so if you're watching those, well then I haven't missed you all, but I've missed this particular video series. This is the regular Monday series of covering all the Kickstarters, what to back, what not to back, what's out there, all that stuff, and it's been like a month since the last one, because Kickstarter was dead in December. Like, dead, so dead, I had basically 4 other videos replacing it. I'm back, is what I'm saying. I think we'll have another one next week as well. We might still, I remember from last year, there's a little bit of a lull. We might have an occasional alternate episode as we go through this, but we will get back to the regularly scheduled content of way too many Kickstarters, because that's apparently how it goes. But let's go ahead and start this off. As usual. We're going to have, we're starting off, unfortunately, with a cancellation. We'll be moving to those into one not funding, a few Kickstarter, a few board game adjacent, and then all the new stuff, because there are no updates this week, starting off with Clash at Rook's Point, which unfortunately canceled. This is one that had 43 backers, $1,000. This is a 2-player head-to-head card game. They unfortunately didn't build up enough interest or something about it. Didn't catch people, didn't get that critical mass. We've talked about this before, but in general, you want to get at least a certain way through your funding. Generally, a 33% minimum in the first day, ideally a first day or two. They didn't really hit that, unfortunately, and they were struggling along. So he's recouping, he's coming back, possibly. I don't know if he's coming back. He's evaluating and taking a look. But if you're interested in Clash at Rook's Point, this will hopefully be coming back. From there, we have in the not funding category, we have a relaunch, Hostile Hoarders, the card game. This is one that relies very much, this is not my style of game, to be very, very clear. This is not my style of game. This relies on humor and inappropriate humor, and it has an After Dark expansion. In general, any game that has like a, After Dark or adult expansion, I'm not the target audience for. That said, what I will say is, even though not the target audience, I think the art is phenomenal, and the puns, despite the fact that they're not to my personal interest, it definitely leans very heavily into morbid and inappropriate and all these things, and all the cards are puns, which with a dark spin to them. Some of them I find amusing, but others not my type of humor, but I appreciate what goes into it despite that. Past that, it's survival-based card game. Again, this is being picked up. This is being picked up by a company that did the company Geek On. They've done some game-related content in the past. I think this is their first actual game on Kickstarter. I could be mistaken with that. They have 4 created over there. But yeah, this is not currently funding. It looks like it will fund. 320 backers, 25 days to go, and basically $15,000 out of an 18K goal. This should fund in case you're interested in that. From there, we move to the first of the board game adjacent. Now, this is one that I did spend a little bit of time talking about in my week in review already this past week, so if you saw that, there's going to be some duplication here. But this is the Dice Towers Kickstarter 2022. $265,000 raised, 4,600 backers, 12 days to go, and yes, I'm definitely one of those backers because I support the Dice Tower. At the end of the day, the Dice Tower, and again, I talked about this in my week in review. If you want to see the whole thing there, by all means. And I talked about it last year as well. But whenever the Dice Tower runs their Kickstarter, I do give them shoutouts for a reason. Generally, if you watch my stuff, if you pay attention to my content, you'll know that I very much try to focus on any upcoming creators, regardless of their size, whether they're larger than me, whether they're smaller than me. I like finding people who aren't the mainstream main people. I like casting eyes on, hey, I just found this new channel, and I really like the spin they have on things. I really like the take they have. I found that their content was done well, their editing, their whatever it is. If I find content I like, I try to share it with you. And that's 100% true. But the Dice Tower is on the reverse end of that spectrum. They are the largest company in this space, the largest content creator in the board game space. And yet I feel just as much appreciation and cause to support them as I do any other company, any other content creator, specifically because of the fact that it's what they do is different than any other content creator. They actually take a full, dedicated approach to covering everything. If you want a channel that covers everything, there's only one channel that does it. There's only one group that does it, and it's the Dice Tower. They are constantly covering as much as possible. If you want to insert a game here and say, hey, I want to review for that game, the Dice Tower will have it. There's not a guarantee that other companies or other content creators will, because this is a passion project for many, and as a passion project means you have a few issues. The first is that people don't keep up with the sheer number of games. 5,000 games came out in 2021. 5,000 games, 4,800 games came out in 2020. Every single year, the amount of games that come out are staggering, and any single individual simply cannot keep up. Combined with that, the bias towards playing the things we like. At the end of the day, speaking for myself, I prefer to cover a game that I love, because a game that I love, I'll happily give it 5, 10, 15 plays and then do a review of it. A game that I don't love, I have to struggle to give it 2 or 3 plays to cover it on the channel. And so there's always going to be that bias, at least for myself and for many other content creators, there's going to be a bias towards selecting the types of games we cover and being much more selective, just being much more selective with our time, our energy, and attention. And so if you actually want a channel that covers everything, the Dice Tower is the only content creator in the space that does so, and that means inherently, offhand, I think they're worth supporting and trying to keep in the space. And every year they grow, and every year they turn that into more for the channel. They up their production, they do more live content, they add people to the team, they add more voices, more perspectives. I'm a huge supporter of the Dice Tower because of this, and I am tremendously grateful, both speaking now as someone who's like in this space as well, but also speaking from 10 years ago when I first started getting into gaming, and they were the channel that I watched the most videos of. And so, yeah, that's my little soapbox about the Dice Tower and supporting their Kickstarter and how it goes. And of course, you can get fun things. I think that all the Dice peeps and all the fun stuff in general, by the way, subscribe to their Kickstarters in general if you want to get the fun stuff off the bat. If you wanted your own little dice person, that's already gone. If you wanted, I don't know, if you wanted to be on their show, it's already gone. If you wanted to have breakfast with them at some of the conventions, some of that stuff is already gone. Although, keep your eyes on them because sometimes people drop their pledges and they come back. Past that, they have promo packs. They have a whole bunch of accessories. They have promo packs, and in case you want, you know, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of promos I want. I'm having to choose what to do here, though, because I'm not spending $200 on promos. I don't mind spending $200 to support them, but $200 on promos I'm just not as interested in. And they divide up the promo packs into specific groups. You have the Air promo pack with a promo for Ares Expedition, for King Domino Origins, and go on further and further through this. You'll see each section is divided up into the different promo packs that they have. And so as you go through them, we have a Core Crest Monster. I want that. I'll admit I do want that. And you keep going through them, you'll find more and more promo cards for different things. Ultra, a little mini, what's it called? The mini scenario, which is great. Ultra is great. I'll talk about that more. Endangered. I want all these promos. I'm not spending $200 on promos. At some point, I will do a video on why I don't chase down promos, but which is arguably counter to my whole thing about supporting the Dice Tower. My thing is not actually buying the promos. My thing is supporting the Dice Tower. Those two have overlap. They're not inherently related. And that's long enough spent on the Dice Tower, but my point is, yeah, I like them, I value them, I want them to stay in the space, and I want them to continue growing and doing what no other content creator in the space currently does. Moving on to Rampart, budget-friendly wargaming terrain. 1,300 backers, $200,000. This is from Arkan Studios, who do both board games and miniatures and terrain stuff. They have a whole bunch of things that they've done in this category, and this is just more of it. If you're expecting a deep dive into this Kickstarter, you're not going to get it. I'm not familiar enough with the intricacies of every terrain to heavily go into it past just saying, hey, if you want board game terrain, if you want some tanks, I believe they have some tanks in here, then they can go ahead and get some of the stuff. Where are the tanks? The tanks were cool, I'll admit that. The terrain in general is cool as well, just I like the tanks. The tanks actually, let's see, I don't know. They had some tanks. They had something here. They had some stuff, extra thingies somewhere along the page. Maybe I'll get to them. I could have sworn they had tanks. They have more terrain sets, and I'm just focusing on the tanks because I know I saw tanks, and I want to get to the tanks. I just don't. Here we go. We have a Wolverine tank. I found a tank. We can call it quits. I got what I wanted out of this. There may be more tanks, but I'm not going to keep searching. Or will I? Will I keep searching? More people, and tanks. We got tanks. The Wolverine tank here. I'm so excited. I don't know why I'm so excited. I don't actually care about the tanks. I'm not even backing this, but I just saw tanks, and then I felt like I had to get to the tanks, and then I made this entire Kickstarter about tanks. So people are going to go get the Rampart terrain, and they're going to be upset that there's not more tanks, because all I focused on was the tanks. There's a tank, and then a bunch of other stuff too, but that's the Rampart terrain from Arkan Studios. Then from there we have Catapult Feud Hydra. Catapult Feud Hydra, 33,000 backers, $326,000 raised, 27 hours to go. This is the first of the board game campaigns. We're going to go ahead and go through this all. There are a bunch, like 12, 13, 14, something like that. You can find all the links in the description down below, as usual, and of course, timestamps left, right, and center. But Catapult Feud Hydra is the newest expansion to Catapult Feud. Catapult Feud was previously on Kickstarter. They had a poll Kickstarter a year ago, whenever it was. They delivered, and now they're coming back with expansion content. You can easily pick up this game in retail, with the caveat that you can't get all the stuff in retail that you can get, or you could have gotten in the last Kickstarter, or that you can get in this Kickstarter. So if you want all the stuff for this game, then Kickstarter is your best choice. If you want just some, the cheapest possible stuff, then retail is your best choice. You'll get the core game and call it a day. Maybe an expansion. They have an expansion. But yeah, this is Catapult Feud Hydra. The basic idea, this is Catapult Feud with the Hydra expansion. Basic idea of this game is basically take your little shooting device and go fling and knock your catapult balls into the other castle, and knocking things over, trying to knock over your enemies before they knock you down. Combine that with some cards that basically are completely unnecessary, but if you want to add them to the game, you can. It's part of the game. I think it's basically their way of saying, hey, this is a game, and it's not just us flinging things at other people's walls. Here are some cards. Now it's a game because it has cards. honestly, I don't really play with the cards. I played with the cards one time. I'll have a review on the channel at some point when I can convince one of my children to sit down with me and cover this. It's a fun game to play with your kids, and it's fun to play with adults too. But not like a board game, more like an activity. And the cards are fun, but I played with the cards once, and since then we just kind of shoot things at each other people's walls, because that's really where the fun is. I don't really care if it's a game or not. It is basically shooting things at other people's walls. Combine that with a variety of expansions that I don't have and haven't dived into, because I don't know if I played this game enough to justify heavily diving into it. But they have Ballistae, and siege engines, and a ship, and volcanoes, and all these other things, and they have the Hydra. Now the Hydra does look like it has a fast flinging majiggy thingy, flinging rock stuff, but it's all just basically more ways of augmenting your castle, more ways of augmenting what you shoot at different things. The core concept, no matter how many different engines you throw on it, is how can we knock down each other's walls as fast as possible. As far as should you back it, should you not, as far as whether it makes sense to get it here on Kickstarter, retail, all of that, Kickstarter is going to be your safest bet as far as getting everything, although it is cheaper on the secondhand market if you're willing to not be choosy about what you get, because the Kickstarter has a bunch of stuff, and you may not be able to find what you want on the secondhand market. That said, if you look at sale prices on the original Kickstarter pledge and the secondhand market, it definitely is cheaper on the secondhand market, so you have to choose. Do you want either just retail, in which case retail is good to go? Do you want to risk what you get on the secondhand market, but you can't get everything, or do you just want to get it on Kickstarter? It's not that expensive, although it will add up quickly as you get a lot, but it's definitely one that's not holding its value, at least not based on what I've seen so far from the prior Kickstarter. Even now, the one of the expansions, if you look at one of the expansions that is available on like Miniature Market, it's cheaper right now on Miniature Market than it is on the Kickstarter campaign. So it's one of those constant things where they're selling it at a certain price online, but even right now you can get it cheaper yourself if you're buying a $100 order with free shipping. It's the nature of free shipping. It kind of kills and ruins everything for a lot of small people. I'm sympathetic, but in terms of what you're looking for, yeah, those are your options. Kickstarter for everything, secondhand market for the best price on a lot of stuff, but not as much guarantee, or just retail on the core stuff and call it a day. Next up, we have Blazon. Blazon from 20th Century Games. Blazon is their newest game, which obviously, because we're on Kickstarter talking about right now, but Blazon is basically a game of building out your shield, your heraldry, so to speak. You're emblazoning your shield with whatever designs or all that. The theme's the theme, but the basic concept of it is similar to any of these games like Concordia, or not Concordia, I don't know why I said Concordia, Cascadia, that's what I meant to say, or any of these puzzly games where you're trying to fulfill multiple scoring criteria as you go. You're trying to take the tiles, put them onto your shields, score multiple criteria, this tile has to go there, that tile has to go there, this will be fulfilling towards that goal, this will be fulfilling towards that goal. I like those types of games, and I imagine Blazon will be no exception to me. I haven't actually played this one, but I'm definitely interested because I generally like this style of puzzly, maximize your score, taking into account 14, 15 different criteria. That's basically what Blazon is. I mean, you can go more into detail. Meeple Mountain has a great video on it, but that's the core concept. Place things on your shield, build your heraldry, score for your shield, score for that criteria, call it a day. As far as the Kickstarter has a few different options. We have the regular edition for $35. This is the standard retail edition of the game. It does come with some backer bonus rewards. That's relevant because guaranteed the retail edition of the game will be cheaper at retail than what you'd have to pay now plus shipping. Buying it at retail with free shipping from your local whatever versus not local, online whatever, versus paying over here plus the shipping costs, it's definitely going to be cheaper at retail. Now you will not be getting the backer bonuses though, so you have to factor in how much you care about the cloth bag and the 24 card embellishment mini expansion, and or how hard that is going to be track it down. Past that, your other options are going up to the deluxe edition where you're paying $50, but you're getting the deluxe edition of the game with a whole bunch of wood premium components. If I can find them somewhere here, they're definitely somewhere here. Here we go. Here's the standard edition, the basic edition of the game. We have the shields, we have the tokens, we have the cards, all those stuff. All these little tokens are all cardboard punchboard. And we have the deluxe edition where you have upgraded stuff. You have upgraded abatement markers, you have upgraded wooden herald tokens, upgraded animal tokens. They have a nice little picture of just how big those chunky wood meeples are. Not really meeples anymore. We're well past meeples and into just heraldry, chunky wooden heraldry. I don't imagine that will take off, but that's what it is effectively. And so you have all that for $50, basically paying an extra $15 to deluxify your game. You still have that problem of if you pay $50 for this game plus shipping, the retail edition of the game is going to end up being half that price. So you have to decide how much do you care about those extras, the 24 card mini expansion, the deluxifications, but at least now you move more into a reasonable competition around whether you prefer Kickstarter or retail for the deluxe edition of the game. The flip side, before we get to the flip side, the add-on as well, there's a $30 add-on in case you want to get anodized zinc alloy achievement animal tokens. That really takes it up a notch. It's always a little bit frustrating there because you have this weird tangent of if you get the deluxe edition of the game, you're already partially paying for upgraded tokens, and then over here you can get even further upgraded tokens. It's always that little frustration of like feeling like you're paying twice for the same thing, unless of course you end up preferring one or the other. At least you have options, so you technically are getting both. You're just not as likely to use both. With that, we can talk about the value aspect, that will it hold its value. Short version is 20th Century Games in general. Most of their Kickstarters, they're harder to sell for what you pay for them on the secondhand market, so it's not one that I think will hold its value. Which means the real question for you comes down to, do you prefer the Deluxe Edition or not? Do you prefer that expansion pack or not? How much are you willing to pay extra to get those extras? Because it will cost more on Kickstarter, but you will get more on Kickstarter, so ultimately it's your call as far as what do you value in terms of picking that up yourself. Next up, we have Rise of the Necromancers from Mythic Games. This is part of their Phoenix line. $224,000, 1,800 backers so far, 449% funded. That's what I'm looking for. This is part of their Phoenix line in association with Sore Loser Games, who previously did Rise of the Necromancers. Rise of the Necromancers is 7.4 on Board Game Geek. This is a game that has already come out, I believe, with 2 Kickstarters. They had the original Kickstarter from Sore Loser Games, and then the expansion, the Kickstarter and expansion, and now they're coming back to GameFound this time around with Mythic Games as part of the Phoenix line that they've done with Enchanters beforehand, and then they're coming along with the prior expansions, miniature packs, and a new expansion as well. So a whole bunch more stuff for this game. This is the nature of Kickstarter. Your previous, $70 game, which is totally reasonable, even though it's already expensive, relatively speaking, is now even more expensive if you want it all, but you do get a lot of shiny stuff, so it depends, as usual, on how much you care about the shiny stuff. Speaking of which, let's go back to Rise of Necromancers. Rise of Necromancers is a bit of an area control game where you play as Necromancers, slowly rising the dead. Every single turn you have the opportunity to rise the dead, paying resources for them, trying to take control of various academies, not really take control, but gain favor in the various academies as you wander across the land and try to become the best Necromancer of all the Necromancers in the game. This does, I believe it has a solo mode. I'm 90% sure it's a 1 to 4 player game, whereas we're 1 to 5 player, it does have a solo mode, but past that, it's a Necromancer game. I highly recommend watching the video, by the way. Video is fantastic. I mean, the voice in that video, by the way, I just wish I had that voice, because then I'd be like, you have to watch this, because otherwise what I do next is going to not work, but it's like, Rise of the Necromancers, back this game now on GameFound. Please, I beg you, watch the video so whatever I did is less weird than it just was. It's not weird, but it's slightly less weird if you watch that video, so please, for my sake, watch the video. Anyways, back to the campaign. So basically, Rise of the Necromancers is going to have the first expansion. It's going to be having the Grim Harvest. If you back in any of the main pledge levels, you're going to get the Grim Harvest expansion, which comes with additional 100 smaller scale miniatures and stretch goals. This is something that will be available later to purchase. It does not seem like anything is exclusive here, but it will cost extra for people to get it later. So the basic prices, everything's supposedly cheaper than MSRP, plus you're getting the Grim Force as well for cheaper, which will cost extra as well. So supposedly, based on what we're seeing, based on what we're being told about price points, it looks like you're getting a very good price here. The $169 is going to get you everything for all the stuff, which everything I told you may have scared you off. And maybe now you're like, $169, that's reasonable. Well, wait till next week when we start Marvel vs. Zombies. Wow, yeah. It was nice knowing you. Anyways, list pledge. So list pledge, $169 for that. Then we have the Necromancer pledge of $79 for the base game, which is going to give you the core game plus those extra miniature expansion pack, the Grim Harvest, all these stretch goals, all the stuff that comes with that. We have the Old Bones pledge, which gives you the new content. So in case you are someone who has the original, you back the Kickstarters, you just want the Undead Sea expansion and all the miniatures, the Old Bones pledge is where you're going to want to pay attention. All of these are giving you supposedly a good price based on the fact that the Grim Forest expansion will cost, is it the Grim Forest? The Grim Harvest. The Grim Harvest expansion will cost you more, plus the price points alone, so seemingly a good price compared to retail, assuming things hold true. Whole bunch of stretch goals from Deluxified miniatures, Deluxified resource tokens, Deluxified everything. There's just mythics involved, mythics getting involved and taking the whole everything can be a miniature approach to things. Speaking of which, over here we have the various options over here. We have Dawn of Demons, which is the original expansion. We have the Undead Sea, which is the new expansion, and we have the Foul and the Wicked, which is completely unnecessary. This is basically giving you that fact that as you have these various necromancers across the games, you have different necromancers you can have, and the Foul and the Wicked is deluxifying all of those to be their own unique miniature. Basically, once you reveal your necromancer and who you are, you take that respective necromancer, as opposed to in the original game, you just still have the token, but you're like, I'm this necromancer, and people are like, okay, sure you are, and now you're like, I'm this necromancer, and people are like, I cower in fear. I mean, you can do it either way. It's a nice quality of life upgrade, is what I'm saying. But past that, that is everything going on here. Will it hold its value? Will it not? Should you get it? Should you not? This one's a bit of a harder one to say for sure. If you look at the original Kickstarter, the Rise of the Necromancer expansion and Kickstarter, and you look at the aftermarket for those games, they definitely take a small hit. Not a huge hit, but for the most part, tracking the Kickstarter price to the aftermarket sales, it's definitely one that has gone down in value. So if you're like, I'll get this game, and if it's not for me, I'll turn around and sell it. Well, the original Kickstarter would have been, you would have lost a little money. Not a ton. You enjoyed yourself. You spent $20. You got whatever. You got some fun along the way for the $20 loss. Yeah, sure, you can do that. But as far as this one over here, it's likely to be at least that. But my speculation would be that it's likely a safer bet than that. The combination of throwing all the miniatures in, having the extra stuff, the Grim Harvest expansion, that's throwing you a lot of extras your ways that makes me think that this is more likely to hold its value compared to the original. Certainly not a guarantee though, because again, I'm tempering what I know about the original taking a hit on the value versus the fact that there's more going on here. So I think it's a fairly safe back. You may still lose money on this one, so it definitely is still a risk factor in that sense, but I would back this with a decent degree of confidence in terms of being one you can turn around and sell it for after the fact if it's one that does not work for you. Again, like most of these things in general on these videos, this is not my recommendation or advice on how to make money. This is my recommendation or advice on how to back and get the things you want while losing as little as possible when they're not for you. If you want to talk about making money, see my previous comment about Marvel Zombies coming next week, although you will have to spend a bank to get it and then make money. But I don't know why I'm talking about this. Let's talk about that next week. We'll talk about it next week. Moving on to Don Pierre. Don Pierre from R&R Games. This is coming to you from Rolla and Costa, who have done a bunch of other previous heavier games. Don Pierre is the newest iteration, and no, this is not viticulture. I say that because I literally titled my review. Here's the deal. So I covered this game. I covered the game for the campaign, and when I covered it, I got a note from the company saying, hey, if you can make sure it's clear this is not viticulture, because a lot of people think it's basically just viticulture. And I was like, that is reasonable, because I saw this and I was like, this is basically just viticulture. Just on the surface level. We're just all shallow that way. We see a game, we see it's about wine or alcoholic beverages, and we're like, that's viticulture inherently, even though that's a silly approach, but many people took that. So I titled my review, this game is definitely not viticulture, and I still got a ton of comments saying, this game basically is just viticulture. I have viticulture, I already like it, I'll keep viticulture. I'm like, I titled the review, this is not viticulture. What do you mean I have viticulture? Whatever. Anyways, the point is, Don Pierre is definitely not viticulture, and it really isn't. It's no similarity at all from a gameplay stance. There is nothing that could remotely be comparable past the fact that on a very high level, the board gives a viticulture feel, and they're both about making alcoholic beverages. That's as far as it goes. I really, genuinely, I mean, this is like comparing Zombicide to Gloomhaven. Like, on a surface level, sure, but really the two are targeting very different people. Anyways, now that we spent enough time telling you this game is not viticulture, and now that I expect like 14 comments in the comments down below telling me, no, it's okay, I won't back Don Pierre, I already have viticulture. Now I'm actually going to get 14 comments down below saying that, so we'll see how that goes. But anyways, Don Pierre. Don Pierre is a heavy game about making, I believe, champagne primarily. You're going to be taking actions every single round, moving them up a track, and your actions get more powerful as the game goes on. So you want to try to run those actions up the track. The flip side is, as your actions get to the top of the track, that's what triggers endgame. So each time you move to the top of a track, you're going to get a total of 5, well, it depends on player count actually, but you're going to get a total of some number of them, like 4 to like 8, depending on the player count, where you can move them to the top of the track and slide them over. So it's both the timer on the game while giving you cooler and more powerful actions that you can take as the game progresses. From there, you're taking one of 6 basic core actions. Actions such as harvesting grapes, activating your presses to make grapes, upgrading your vineyard with various upgrades or abilities, profiting from your work, turning around and selling your actual wine, gathering some bonuses. It doesn't show me all 6 actions here, but getting some bonuses where you can cash in as well, trying to figure out the best combination of the abilities you can take, noting that some abilities require you to pay money to take them, which means you have to make sure you're getting money, and the game has a tight economy as you get money. Very tense, very tough, very heavy and thinky as you try to figure out how to min-max your way towards that ultimate scoring condition. That is basically Don Pierre from R&R Games. Pledge levels here are not cheap, unfortunately, at least compared to everything. Everything's relative, but when we're getting more and more expensive in terms of euros on Kickstarter. It used to be they can get one price, and now it's like they're getting more and more expensive. We have the regular copy of Don Pierre for $49. This does not include any unlocks or add-ons. For the connoisseur, you have $59, which gives you all unlocked stretch goals for the game, and for $79, you get all the extras. This is where you start moving to the full deluxeification of everything. So let's try to scroll down and show you what we have for those different pledge levels. Here we have the aficionado pledge, giving you $79 for all the extras, which includes some first player marker, squishy grapes, and a game board playmat, which is basically an extra $20 to give you squishy grapes, a metal bottle, and the playmat. Now, altogether, that's not bad if you want all those things. $20 is usually the price of a playmat alone, and you're getting a bunch of extras as well. But if you don't want the playmat, then you're paying $20 for the extras, and that starts moving into territory of what do you want, what do you not want. That's more of a you problem as far as figuring out which of those pledge levels you want. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? Effectively, I'm looking at that $59 pledge level and the various stretch goals they have. Let's see if we can scroll down to the stretch goals, because they have enough stretch goals. I highly recommend avoiding the $49 pledge. Fortunately, all but 8 of you are already listening to me there, but ignore that $49 pledge. Get it at retail if you just want the basics. If you're getting the $59 pledge, you're paying $10 and getting a bunch of extras already, so you start getting all these other extras, some form of deluxeifications, and then obviously once you go to the aficionado pledge, you start getting even more, or you can even buy some of these separately. You can get those grapes on their own in case you don't want everything. But again, the balance, what do you want, what's the price point, it's cheaper if you get it all together. That's a you decision as far as how to handle that. But I definitely recommend going for the $59 pledge if you are getting this one at all. As far as will it hold its value, I'm skeptical it will, and this is one just me extrapolating from the fact that the Kickstarter is doing okay but not great. In general, when you have 410 backers on a Kickstarter, that demand, or arguably lack thereof, generally will translate into the aftermarket as well. There are exceptions. Sometimes you have games that blow up and they do amazingly well and people love them, and then there's buzz and now there's only 410 copies to get your hands on. That is usually the exception. More often than not, the lack of excitement around the Kickstarter will translate into a lack of excitement around the secondhand market as well, and so it's one where I'm skeptical you'll get your full amount of money back as far as getting this on Kickstarter versus being able to sell your copy down the road if it's not a game for you. Moving on to Skytear Horde. Skytear Horde, the asymmetric castle defense game for 1 to 3 players. 1 to 3 players is specifically, and I didn't say this in my review because I didn't even know this in my review because I only played it at 2 players, but actually that's not true, I played it at 1 and 2, just not 3, but the 3-player mode is when you're playing, competitive, when you have one player playing as the Horde against the other 2 players or whatever it is. That's the 3-player mode. But basically it's a tower defense game, sort of. Really, it's just Hearthstone, and as far as I got a comment saying, how is this like Hearthstone? This is nothing like Hearthstone, this is tower defense. No. Tower defense is a theme. This is Hearthstone in the actual gameplay, meaning you basically have 2 levels of cards. You have 2 levels of cards, your own minions, or your allies, so to speak. You have the enemy minions, and you're facing off, and when you deal damage to an undefended lane, you hurt their health, and when they deal damage to your undefended lane, they hurt your castle. If you think of their gates and your castle as the respective player health, that's effectively what this game is. So it's a card combat, lane battling, Hearthstone-ish style gameplay. That's not a criticism, to be very clear. I'm just explaining why I believe it's like Hearthstone, and it's definitely an amazing experience. I really enjoyed my time with Skytear Horde, and I'm eager to dive back into this one. This is a puzzly solo or cooperative or competitive experience in which you have a variety of different factions, a variety of different abilities you can pull together to try to figure out how to craft a deck. And another thing I didn't even know when I was covering the review is you can mix cards together from different decks, so you can build out your own deck. You don't have to go with a blue or a red or a yellow. You can literally just mix things together, left, right, and center as much as you want, although that's something that they're primarily selling more together with their extra Kickstarter, where they have all 4 expansions, including the yellow faction, which has a lot more control and fun things, fun abilities that look very intriguing. Sadly, I didn't get that, so I didn't have a chance to play with that. But the basic idea is you're going to be trying to play out your cards, trying to stay one step ahead of the enemy, and it is about staying one step ahead of the enemy. It is hard to be on your feet the entire game. It is hard to sit there and try to think through how to survive, how to block every attack, how to ensure that you are surviving. And this game actually has like a mechanic that I tend to not like in games, and I like this game despite that. This game definitely has a degree of cascading failure. Cascading failure is the idea that if things go poorly for you, they will go even worse for you, and this game definitely has that. If you let a few too many attacks in, if you have a few too many powerful enemies taking down your initial defense, then you're just not set up to do well, and so it has that aspect, but I find it to be such a rewarding puzzle that I enjoy it despite that. Every single round is a tension of looking at what the enemy just threw at you and trying to think through, okay, it looks like I'm going to die. How can I spend time ensuring that I don't die? And often, if you take your time, if you see the patterns, you often can survive until you do what I did, which is after my review, you keep upping the difficulty level, and then you're like, oh, that's how you die. Okay, cool. So I have died quite a bit in this game by upping the difficulty level. Either way, I'm getting into full review territory. I have a review. You can check that out. There's a gameplay over on Quackclip. You check that out. One Stop Co-op Shop has some coverage on it. Dylan of All You Can Board. I always say Dylan. It's Dylan of All You Can Board has some coverage on it. I believe Room and Board will be having some upcoming content around the game. Either way, lots and lots of stuff around this game, but it's a really, really solid system. And also, it's not Skytear. It's Skytear Horde. Same universe, different game, although if you like the abilities of one, you'll likely like the powers and abilities of the other 2. As far as pledge levels over here, we have a few different things. We have $29 for the Skytear Horde retail box. In general, I recommend not getting the retail stuff. Always get the extra stuff. I guess not necessarily always. I have to take a look over here, but not necessarily always. This one there's a little more going on, a little more reason, because the gameplay all-in starts giving you the... So let's see, the gameplay all-in is going to be $46, which is basically an extra $17, but you're going to get the 2 exclusive expansions over there. And those are one expansion for the Horde, and one expansion for you, basically. Basically, the retail version of the game comes with 6 decks. You have 3 hero decks, or 3 good guy decks, and then 3 bad guy decks. And you're going to try to figure out how you're pairing those off against whatever. So, because you have 1 bad guy deck in every single game, and then you have 1 or 2 good guy decks in every game, although you can mix and match cards as well. From there you go to the gameplay all-in, which gives you the other 2 decks. So now you have 4 decks for each side. You have 4 enemies and 4 allies. More mixing and matching, more comboing, more ways to mix and match your experience to give you a variable experience every single time you dive into it. And then for $69 you have the Skytear Horde Deluxe, which gives you the deluxe box, which I can find somewhere here. I'm pretty sure I scrolled past it already. The deluxe box, here we go. Here's the deluxe box over here, which gives you the playmat, the storage, the deluxe 5 tokens, all storing it nicely. And in general, by the way, this is a game where I do want the playmat. My critique against playmats in general is I don't like the storage of playmats, but if you give me the storage of a playmat in a nice box, well, that changes the entire conversation, doesn't it? And so this playmat is a playmat that I definitely do want, along with that deluxe box over there, giving you both the content, the extras. Now there's going to run you $69, which is an extra $23 on top of the other box, and then you're paying for the extra box over there, the deluxe tokens, and the neoprene mats. So you have to decide, is that worth it? Is it not? That's not gameplay. That's extras. It's nice stuff, but it's not gameplay, and the gameplay is totally fine without the playmat. I know this because I have played it without the playmat every single time I've played it. But I like this game enough that I definitely do want the playmat. And then from there you have the Skytear Horde. What do we have? No, then we have $114 for the Skytear Horde Collector, giving you a whole bunch of extras, including custom sleeves, a promo pack, art book, extras over there. For sleeves, I generally recommend Sleeve Kings. That's what I usually recommend as being the best price for value comparison over here. But this is a lot of extra money for getting a promo pack, art book, and that. So you have to decide if you want that or not. That's up to you. But that is basically Skytear in a nutshell. Will it hold its value? Will it not? It's hard to say on this one. It is hard to say. If you look at the original Skytear, which is the closest comparison that we have, even though it's a totally different game, but same company, same overlap. If you look at the original Skytear, it is a bit hard to say as far as how it holds its value because of how they divided retail after the fact versus the original Kickstarter. It seems like the original pledges did hold their value compared to what people paid for them, but then from there it devolves very quickly because Skytear kind of changed the way they do their packages. It wasn't their Kickstarter offering over here, and then they had the base game and multiple packs and expansions that you can get separately. So they kind of change what was available, which makes it hard to compare and contrast the price points or value of different things. I believe this one is a fairly safe bet. I believe it's a very good game. Most people I know who have covered this game or played this game have enjoyed this game and have had said positive things about the game, which is usually a good sign. Combine that with 2,200 backers. I mean, that to be very clear, by the way, the initial pre-launch campaign has something like 600 backers, or maybe right before they launched it, like 1,000 people following it. So when you have 1,000 people following it and you double that within the first few days, that usually means that people are paying attention, people are interested, and people are jumping in on this, which clearly happens. So that's usually a good sign for generally the long life cycle of the game. Combine that with the fact that once you go to the gameplay all in, you have 2 Kickstarter exclusive expansions, factions, so to speak. That means that's exclusivity as well. So this game is a good game. Combine that with a reasonable price point. Combine that with exclusive factions. I am 90% certain that this middling pledge over there will hold its value. Once you move to the deluxe pledge, same basic conversation. That $23 for a box, tokens, and playmat, when a playmat on its own can often run close to that on its own, I do think it'll hold its value for those 2 pledge levels. When you go up a tier, I'm less certain, and when you go down a tier, I'm pretty certain it won't, but the 2 middle pledge levels I think are pretty safe backs, all things considered. Moving on to Viscounts, Gates of Gold, and Keeper of Keys, and give me a second to take a sip here, because I've been going strong for a while, and I need a break. Every once in a while, I take a sip of water or seltzer or whatever, and I'll pour a little on myself because I'm just a little too excited. I always worry I'll do that on camera. And I'm not going to edit it out. It's just going to be, I'll just have a wet shirt all of a sudden, and it'll be really awkward because apparently Alex can't drink water. Although now I'm just talking about it in advance, so when it does happen, I'm going to eventually link back to this moment in this video and say, I called it. And now it looks cool because now I'm wasting time. Viscounts, Gates of Gold, and Keeper of Keys. 3,700 backers, $400,000, as usual, another smash-out hit from Garple Games. By the way, Garple Games just announced a new solo game. Looks very cool. You can check that out. I didn't think to talk about it in this video, so I didn't have a link up. But yeah, they have a new solo game coming with very cool art, campaign game, escalating back and forth. I'm very intrigued. We're getting distracted again. These are the 2 expansions to Viscounts. Viscounts, which I really have to sit down and play. I've read the rules. I have not played it. It's the only one of their series of games that I haven't really dived into yet. But this is the Gates of Gold and the Keeper of the Keys expansion for the game. In general, I recommend Meeple University to check out the videos on the contents, what the 2 game systems add, what the 2 expansions add to the system. Meeple University has a dedicated video on both, covering exactly what you need to know in depth, so you can check that out, and also short and in depth, so you got both of those at once. In general, this is going to be continuing Garple Games' typical thing of not going with a FOMO approach. Somewhere up here, they talk about it over here, the usual thing of there's no exclusive items in this Kickstarter campaign. If you prefer to wait for that items to become available in retail, we are 100% okay with that. So as usual, this is one of those mixed bags where I both salute them for not taking a non-FOMO approach, while the flip side of that is it does mean that depending on where you are internationally or not internationally, or depending on what your accesses are, it does mean that you could get some of their stuff for cheaper if you're willing to wait for retail. Although it does depend on what you want, because they also do have the all-in box, the coins, so there are a bunch of reasons to support this campaign, anything from supporting them as a publisher to trying to get the extra stuff without having to track them all down, because even though you might be able to get them later, not everything will be cheaper at retail. But if you're looking at a direct dollar to dollar on the 2 expansions alone, if you're only looking for the 2 expansions and you compare it to the online retail price of the game compared to the Kickstarter where you're going to have to get the game plus pay for shipping, it's the prices are actually comparable, roughly $26 here and $26 for any of their games online. The difference is that you're paying for shipping here, and if you get a $100 order from Miniature Market or whatever store you want, you will not be paying for shipping. So again, it's that weird contrast. I always feel bad doing this because I'm like, I support the fact that you are being an excellent publisher and not relying on FOMO, but that does mean that if they're not giving you an incentive to back the Kickstarter, if they're not giving you some sense of FOMO, whether that FOMO is price or content, then it also takes away some of the reason to back on Kickstarter and lock up your money for a year and pay more for it. So it's always that weird contrast. I just wish the prices were always the same, but the balance is some places the prices are cheaper. So it depends on what you want. It depends if you're international. It depends on if you want the big box to house everything. It depends on the collector's box over here, and the collector's box will have some promo content in it. It depends on if you want the coins and you want to pay extra to get the coins as well, at which point the Kickstarter just becomes an easier place to just get it all at once. So many reasons to get it here, many reasons to get it at retail. It depends ultimately on what you're looking for from this line of games, and that is the Viscounts Expansions. Next up we have Guardians of Fire, which we recently funded. This one was struggling a bit for the first day or two, but made its way over the finish line. 278 backers. This is Guardians of Fire coming to you from MME, what is it called? Magical Miniatures Game, MMG. Magical Miniatures Game. And this is actually an interesting one. I'll just do a quick tangent on this one before you dive into the game. There is a little backstory and drama about this game. You can check out King of Avage's video. He goes into it. Basically, they originally were called Mythic Monolith Games, and then they had some issues with miniatures being utilized in different campaigns. It doesn't seem like there's anything that problematic here, which is not why I'm not going to heavily go into detail. It's enough so that you might want to be aware of it or mindful of it, which is why I'm mentioning it, so that you can walk in as informed as you want. It seems like some mostly innocent attempt at marketing or taking advantage of marketing without any real malice or problems. That's from a surface level, from what I see over here, I don't think there are any real problems here, but any form of anything fishy, and it's worth you knowing, it's worth you being aware of it, so you can back and make an informed decision before you back. So I highly recommend checking out King of Avage's video before you back this to see if those things are flags for you, to see if they're problems for you. So that's my background there. Past that, Magical Miniatures Game, Guardians of Fire. Guardians of Fire is a one versus many Overlord type game. You have one player playing as the Overlord, controlling all the baddies and whatnot, and then other players playing as the various heroes trying to make their way through the dungeon to survive over here. Focuses very heavily on a narrative aspect. Mark Street covers, Mark Street has some content around the game. You can check that out, as well as on tabletop. There's a gameplay on tabletop. You can check that out. That's from the game when they relaunched it, so that's going to be an older video, but you can check that out as well. And that's basically Guardians of Fire. Lots of miniatures here, lots of stuff, lots of content. Pledge levels are going to be coming to you at €99, $114 for the early bird core pledge, €119, $136 for the core pledge Rising Darkness, and then going up from $171 to the Priests and Knights, and $280 for the all-in-one expansion over there. And I feel like I have children coming down the stairs, so I may have to figure this out. We have an uninspected guest over here. So, hey buddy, come on over. We have an unexpected guest, so I'm going to say hi. Apparently, my son came home. Okay. Hey, buddy. How's it going? Blippi? We're not going to watch Blippi right now. Okay, I'm going to go drop this child off by other caretakers, and we'll be back in a minute. I should have put the gate up. This is going to be one of those times where there's going to be a cut in the video. I will see you in a second. Okay. Whew. Okay, the joys of parenting. And by the way, I mean it seriously, it is the joys of parenting. It's just not the best for the video. But either way, $280 for the epic all-in-one of Guardians of Fire. So that's where we are with Guardians of Fire. Potentially a lot of content, a lot of ways to add to just how much you want to get. But that's basically it. Will it hold its value? Will it not? Should you back it? So this is one that's not going to see a wide retail release. We can almost certainly expect that. It's just unlikely to see that wide distribution. And the 278 backers, again, like I said earlier with Pierre, at the end of the day, when you have a lack of an interest in a Kickstarter campaign, that usually will translate to the aftermarket as well. Now, this does have a lot of pretty shiny miniatures, which can help. I expect this one is going to fall into one of two categories. Either it simply does not hold its value, or it holds its value, but to a very small, limited subset of people, and it's just going to be hard to find that one buyer who does want to track it down and get a copy. So it's one that is definitely very much a risk as far as deciding to back it, hoping that it holds its value. That said, If you want it, you don't have a lot of options because you can either hope it shows up in the secondhand market or hope for a subsequent Kickstarter. So it goes into, again, trying to decide there, but one that is definitely more of a risk factor. Moving on to Yucatan. Yucatan from Matago Games. This is doing $169,000, 2,000 backers. This one's doing well, but not as well as I would have expected. Overall, Yucatan is their 4th game in the Kemet Inish Cyclades trilogy of games, or quadrilogy of games. It's unofficial, but yes, nonetheless, that's going to be their newest one. This is from the same designers as Kemet. Okay, the same designers as Kemet. Come back to Kickstarter with Yucatan, which takes a lot of the core systems or feelings of Kemet, including monsters, including upgrading, including your troops, and having your troops have different abilities and strengths and modifiers and all those things. The same basic combat principles you've grown to know and love in Kemet, and basically taking just those. It focuses much more heavily on those, much more heavily just on building up your troops and building up your associated powers of the troops and adding monsters and adding card plays, and then just diving into each other in combat again and again and again, ultimately with the goal and the objective of taking various hostages, taking these hostages that you can then sacrifice in an effort to go higher and higher on the track and get more and more points every single round as you upgrade just how good you are in this game. It's basically fast-paced frenetic combat with a lot of the core combat systems of Kemet, but taken so differently that it feels clearly the basis origin of Kemet is there while being a completely different beast at the same time. As far as pledge levels is 2. There's the for France only for €35 or $40. This is only relevant if you're in France, so if you're not in France, well, I mean, don't back that pledge level. And then for $80 or €70, we have the Yucatan base pledge, and then there's a retailer pledge, which is likely not relevant for most of you. This is going to be the same price tag, basically. I think it's up by like $1 from, if you looked at the original Kemet, the Kemet Blood and Sand, it's up by like €1 or something like that. So it's pretty much the same price as far as price point on the games. But as far as the games themselves, the gameplay we already talked about. I have a review on the channel. I have a gameplay over on Quacklope, so you can check that out. But as far as will it hold this value, will it not? So first of all, let's go through the stretch goals. Let's talk about some stretch goals soon, because we're still going, we're still unlocking a whole bunch of monsters in the game, and we have some stretch goals being unlocked, some upgrades. We have the upgraded corn, which means I imagine we can see upgraded jade along the way. I just cannot see a scenario where they're like, here's upgraded corn, and here's your little jade tokens. I cannot imagine that. I could be wrong, but I can't imagine that. Then we have some more monsters, some more troops, some more cards, all these things slowly being unlocked. Upgraded quality, a corn tray, that's nice. I mean, it could be nice if it's not too small. If it's too small, you're just kind of digging your fingers in there. It's annoying. But if it's the right size, that'd be great. We have inside the box art and UV spot. Those are always nice while not being essential to me personally. Looks like we have an upcoming monster coming, and many of these are going to be in the retail, or more specifically, it seems like they're going to be in the retail. If you look through the comment section, they've been very clear that they're not really taking an approach of what is Kickstarter exclusive, what's not exclusive. I'll explain in a second. They're not taking a big approach of what's Kickstarter limited or whatever versus not until they go through after the campaign, so we won't necessarily see what is split, although they keep referencing, but check Blood and Sand, like we clearly did a good job there having some stuff, you know, limited or not. And so what I mean by that, or what they mean by that, and again, there's no guarantees here because they're not making commitments, which means it is a bit of a guessing game, at least right now, although we do have 15 days to see, which means we still have at least one more to back or not to back, but while we still go over this. But what does that mean? In Kemet Blood and Sand, what they did is they took an approach of having these game packs. I don't remember the exact term, but they're these game packs which you can buy after the fact. So you could have gotten the Kickstarter itself, or you can get the retail version of the game, and if you want some of those extras, you'd have to get the game pack separately. They are likely taking the same approach with Yucatan, but unless and until they say so, it is a risk. While I value and understand the approach in the back end of saying, hey, we're focusing on the Kickstarter journey and collaboration and community and all those things, at the end of the day, when you ask people to put money down on a campaign and you don't tell them what they are getting or what the reason is to back now, you are asking them to take that risk. And for some people, they will. Absolutely. For others, they're going to sit there and say, you know what, I'll just put $1 pledge in, or maybe I won't back at all because I don't know if there's a clear reason why I should back. Now, this is one of those weird things where I both believe that there actually is going to be a reason to back this campaign. I do believe it's likely going to be similar to Kemet Blood and Sand, where Kemet Blood and Sand definitely held its value, although it's not apples to apples because Kemet Blood and Sand is a remake of Kemet, which is well loved for who knows how long, and Yucatan is still new and untested. So it's one of those, it's not a perfect apples to apples. But I do believe there's reason to back Yucatan on Kickstarter as opposed to waiting for retail. At the same time, I believe that as long as they are not giving you specific hard information, they are asking you to take that risk. And so if you're someone who's more on the fence, you can just not back. That's your choice. Or put $1 pledge in and wait and see how it goes. It definitely falls in the category of, I think that for those who are happy to, for the 1,900 people who are happy to just back and pledge, by all means. But for people asking for the information, they might actually want the information in order for them to make a decision, and that's just, it's a hard spot to be in. So I understand anyone who does not back as a result of wanting to wait for that information. On my end, I'm not saying whether it's going to hold its value for the same exact reason. Until I have more information, all I can say is I believe it likely will, based on Kemet, Blood, and Sand, but they haven't confirmed with enough information for me to make an informed judgment call that I'm willing to say on camera. So a lot of disclaimers to the sentence because I don't have the information I need. If we have updates before the campaign ends, I'll talk about it in more to back or not to backs. If not, then we won't. Yeah, that's basically it. That's Yucatan. Moving on to Boba Mahjong, the 2022 relaunch. So this is, I mean, it's just Boba Mahjong. This is just the 2022 relaunch. This is a 2-player Boba card game with a slight twist. It's basically set collection. This is what the game is. It's a little set collection, playing some cards. This is from the company, I can't remember the company, but they have like 17 games on their belt, a whole bunch of cat-themed games. Cat Sudoku is one of their games. But it's Boba Mahjong, a smaller, lighter game, set collection. It's going to be $10 for the game plus shipping, so very cheap, which is both a pro and a con. The pro part is it's very cheap. It's not going to be expensive at all to get your hands on this game. The con part is generally when games are this cheap, you're talking about half the value being eaten up in shipping, so you're not going to get your money back. If you want to back this game, get it because you want the game, and it's a small enough price that you don't mind paying for that experience, but it's not one where you're going to be able to get your price plus shipping back on it unless you're very, very lucky, which I don't anticipate happening. That is Boba Mahjong. And then we have similarly, in the adorable, small, little, cute category, we have Adorablins, the pocket-sized storytelling game. This is giving you a bunch of Adorablins. We have 624 backers, $14,000 raised so far, and this is a pocket-sized mint tin game of just a bunch of little Adorablins where you're going to create a story around. It's a little bit half mechanics, half storytelling as you try to come up with, you know, the scenario you have to engage with, the characters, the items, the things, the various situations. So it's giving you a little mini RPG in your pocket to a degree in terms of what the experience is giving. Think, you know, Rory story cubes, but with more game around it, and that's what you have, and cuter obviously because they're adorable, and that's basically Adorablins. You're going to have $9 for the digital only pledge, and then an extra $5 granted plus shipping for the physical game plus digital in case you want that, and then you can go even further to get a little bite-sized adventure bundle, and then the, you know, the kids RPG bundle if you really want to escalate, giving you the system that the Adorablins is a little based on, so you more and more stuff if you want to get that. See what I said about Boba Mahjong. This is one that because of the price point, it's unlikely to hold its value. It will, if you try to sell it down the road, you're talking about selling a little mint tin for $14, trying to get your shipping dollars as well, shipping back as well. So it does fall in the category of back it if you want it, but do not expect to see your money back on this one in terms of selling it if it's not a game for you. Next up, we go from there to the biggest Kickstarter of the week, which is $1,100,000, 6,300 backers, and 18 days to go on Final Girl Series 2. Now, first of all, huge congrats to Van Ryder Games. This is their first $1 million Kickstarter, and it's, I mean, I've never run a $1 million Kickstarter, so I'm not speaking from experience here, but I can only imagine how much of a feeling it is to have your hard work pay off. Because being in, we talked about this in many videos in the past, we'll talk about it in the future, being in the board game business is not a recipe to make money. Being in the board game business is a recipe to work and slave at the thing you love for the hopeful promise that you can pay the bills and then maybe, just maybe, you'll have a game that makes it. And Final Girl may be that game for Van Ryder Games. $1 million campaign is nothing to sneeze at. That's a bar that only a handful of games, I think like something like maybe 40 different games have crossed that line. That puts them in a very, elite group of people who have actually managed to make it past $1 million campaign. That's amazing. And I'm happy for everyone who works at Van Ryder Games. I'm happy for the payoff, effectively. The payoff of years of work, of years of struggle, of years of challenge, of trying to put out game after game, hoping you can pay the bills this month, hoping you can get it to grow the company, do what you need to do. Final Girl was already a success with like $500,000 raised in the last Kickstarter, and Final Girl 2, because of the critical feedback the game has been receiving since it arrived, and because of the amount of people who are excited and talking about the experience this game gives you, they had $1 million in like the first few days. Absolutely insane. So congrats to Van Ryder Games. Now let's talk about the actual game. Final Girl. Final Girl is a solo-only game of survival horror, taking very much a lean into the movie genre of games, into the horror movie of being the final girl, the last person standing, and then leaning very heavily with what's the word for it? When you have a nod, it's there's a word I'm blanking on here, but they have little nods or tributes to classic movies in terms of movies from like The Thing, from Alien, from any different genres or films, both from the original Kickstarter and the new one, and each pack of games gives you a new killer and a new location. So basically, Final Girl is composed of a single core set that is nothing you can actually play with. It's the tools you need to play, but it gives you nothing you can actually play with. Think of it as Ticket to Ride gave you a bunch of like cards and a board, and then they're like, and they get all these other expansion packs that give you the other stuff. A bunch of trains, not the board. The boards are actually different. They give you like cards and trains, and then the other expansion packs all give you boards and stuff, whatever it is. It's that idea. It's the idea of giving you a core system, which is not playable, and then giving you any number of expansion packs, which makes the game playable. And the expansion packs, like I said already, all come with a location location and a killer. The location and the killer combine to give you a game. You have the core set, a location, and a killer, and there you have the game. Core set's always the same, but the location and the killer can be mixed up as you want, and while thematically you might want to keep to the location and killer of the core box, of the, not the core box, of the whatever pack you're looking at, you can mix and match it to have, you know, the final girl from an alien movie, and the location of a haunted carnival, and the monster of the thing. You can have all these combinations of different things that will combine to give you different experiences. Now, the final girls themselves are not that variable. Small little tweaks to them, to their character stats and the way they're different. Usually it's the location and the killer that are the primary ways that each pack differentiates itself. And Series 1 had 5 different packs, which gave you a whole ton of content, and Series 2 is doubling that content with even more, and they have a handy-dandy little feature film thing, which is basically a square root chart. The square root of 1 is 1. The killer and location combos you have. If you have 1 killer and 1 location, you have 1 combination. If you have 2, you have 4. If you have 3, you have 9. This is a square root chart. This is why math is utilized. When they told you you're going to use your math when you grow up, this right here, this is the moment you've been waiting for, and Final Girl ruined it for you by putting it on a spreadsheet, so little charts, so you didn't even need to use that math that you were told you're going to use growing up. I still haven't used geometry, although someone clearly did to make this chart. Anyways, that is basically what's going on with the combinations, although I'm going to one-up that because every single, first of all, you have the final girls, but they're not that variable. But even the killers and the locations come with a ton of variability to the way they play out, from the starting events to the way the killers are created. They have a little top and bottom half. There's a ton of variability to even each killer and each location. So while technically the combinations of killer and locations are 100 if you have all 10, the actual variability of the game system is huge. Like ridiculously huge. Just ridiculously huge. That's the words I'm looking for over here. But also, along with the huge amount of variability, comes the fact that there's a lot of stuff you can be getting here and a lot you can be paying. I mean, the all-in here is going to run you not a cheap amount at all. The Epic all-in is going to be $329, which gives you the core system, all the Season 2 content, all the Season 1 content, all the miniatures. There are miniatures you can get, the gruesome book death set, the Paula promo card, and the giant boxes that hold all your stuff, because they have some delightful boxes. Let's see if we can find the boxes over here, because I know one of the things they did with this Kickstarter campaign is they gave you a nice little Calyx friendly box shelf, which kind of makes you want to get both of them, which is a problem because I'll show you in a second. You'll see if I can find it over here. And they have miniatures as well, which are unnecessary. Here we go. Okay, here's the box sets over here, the little GIF you can see on the screen. Each of these boxes stores 1 season. And then the problem is, if you combine all properly, it then goes into your Calyx shelf with 2 of them fitting perfectly. So 2 seasons of Final Girl fits onto your Calyx cubby, which I don't know. I mean, that's the best marketing you possibly could have done, because that makes me want to get a full another set of Final Girl, because who wants to have half a Calyx cubby of Final Girl? You have to get the full set, right? Right? You don't have to. But that's basically it. I mean, at the end of the day here, there's a lot of different pledge levels, a lot of different options for what you can get here. The game has been well rated. I mean, I have a review of the game. I think it's one of the most thematic and immersive games I have. The gameplay to me had a little bit more randomness on its own, but it's a mixed bag for me of lots of pros and some mild cons around the mechanics. Mike Luso from the Dice Tower gave it a Dice Tower seal of excellence, 9 out of 10. In general, there's been a far more hype for this game than not. This game has been well received across the board, and they're just giving you more content for that. Do you need all that content? Likely not, unless you are a very, very, very big solo person. If you are a huge solo player, then yes, getting all the stuff. If you love the game system, absolutely. Going from, hey, I haven't played this game, to a $329 all-in pledge, that is definitely a commitment. And it's a commitment that may or may not work for you, but here we get to the good part, the good news. Will it hold its value? The answer is likely yes. Based on what I've seen so far of just the original Kickstarter and how well it's done in the aftermarket, this is a game that has been selling for above its pledge level. And the Kickstarter content does come with exclusives you can't get otherwise. So going all in or getting the exclusive stuff on Kickstarter, at the end of the day, you have a system here that is clearly well loved, that is clearly well sought after, that has exclusive content. So if you're not sure if it's for you, you actually could get the $329 pledge, and you will almost certainly be able to get your money back if it's not a game system for you. Now, in general, there always is that potential upside when you have a really popular game and you have a subsequent Kickstarter. Sometimes you do have that the amount of people who dive into the second Kickstarter because of the buzz from the first one, sometimes that can hurt the value aspect and make it so that what was previously a safe bet isn't, but usually not. Usually you're still talking about safe bets. Usually it just reduces the amount of extra profit that someone can make. Previously they might have sold a $150 pledge for $275, and now they'll be able to sell their $329 pledge for $339, meaning it usually limits the profit, usually keeps the core value there. So again, and I'm not talking about any of these from a profit perspective. I'm only talking about them from a value perspective. Will it hold its value if you find out that Final Girl is not for you? And assuming you're getting more than like a core box, if you're getting stuff that includes the exclusives, I think you are safe to go on that front. And that is Final Girl. With that, we have two left. We're doing good on time, including the interruption from Child. Colab Relaunch. 1,600 backers, $80,000 raised. This is the relaunch of Colab that was on Kickstarter last year. They're coming back to Kickstarter, and they're coming back with some extras, including a plushie, including Palm Laboratory, including a whole bunch of extras that weren't in the prior campaign. Now, Colab is a semi-worker placement. It's not a cooperative game, first of all. The collab is because you will be utilizing each other's minions as you go through this laboratory. So you are collaborating, but you're not playing a cooperative game. You are helping each other in a way unintentionally, just by the very nature of you being able to utilize each other's minions as you go through this game. But collab is a game of building out your card combos. The core, there's two different sides of the board. There's the core central board you're going to be utilizing to get the resources you need, to build up the laboratory, to get the extras you need, and then to use the abilities to play cards. Then you have the actual cards themselves, which you're going to be building out in your own grid, and the way the cards cascade off one another, the placement bonuses of cards. You can have different types of cards, from monsters to machines to all these different things. You build your potions, and you're building them all out in a way that correlates to one another. This one will score points for every monster in its row. This one will score points for being adjacent to potions. This one will be able to trigger a once per round ability for every single machine that's next to you. You're gonna have different things like that going throughout the course of the game. And so how you build out your card row is a huge part of Collab. Is a huge part of that puzzle and what you're trying to do in the game. That's overall what's going on with Collab, and they've made some changes or tweaks to the game. Keep in mind, I have played the original prototype, the original game, so whatever tweaks or changes they made, I have not had a chance to dive into them myself. If you want to check out Rado's content is going to be the most recent content on the game, I believe, covering the newest version of Collab, so I recommend checking out his gameplay to see how things have changed or iterated from the last time it was on Kickstarter. Past that, what they additionally have is they have some changes to Kickstarter, in the sense that they have a retail edition on Kickstarter, they have Palm Laboratory, and then they have a whole bunch of extras, including a little Cthulhu kitten plushie, whatever it is. But that's what's going on with Collab over here. So let's talk about over here. Over here we have the retail and deluxe edition of the game. In general, if you're getting the retail edition of the game, the retail edition is $45 and a $60 MSRP, but you're also paying shipping. Versus if you wait till it actually shows up in retail, you will basically be getting roughly that price point with free shipping if you're placing a $100 order from anyone. So in other words, there are cheaper ways to get the retail edition of the game if you're willing to wait for it to show up in retail and get it with your $100 order. That's as far as the retail edition of the game. The exclusive version of the game is only going to be available on Kickstarter, which means if you want the exclusive version of the game with the miniatures, with the little dice trays and all that stuff, if you want the more blinged out version of the game, your options are Kickstarter or the secondhand market. And so we'll have to get to the will it hold its value soon enough. And then we have the all-in pledge, and this is going through the rest of the stuff over here. This is what's included in the deluxe, the retail, and then the regular components of both editions. And then it's a bunch of other stuff as well, including Palm Laboratory, which, by the way, first of all, I want this game, just to be very clear. I want Palm Laboratory. Secondly is Palm Laboratory is a riff off both of their games. It's a riff off Portal Dragon's most popular game so far, which was Palm Island. Okay, but that makes more sense name-wise. We're going to get to the name in a second, because Palm Island, Palm Trees, that makes sense. But then combining that with Collab, and so you have Palm Laboratory giving you, it seems to be new challenges with a similar system. So it's not going to be exactly just a pure redone game, but similar system as Palm Island, but with the world of Collab. Okay, that's what they're doing here. They're offering that as an option here, and we have 489 people who are backing for that pledge level, and I guarantee you I'm picking this up because I definitely want that option over there. I've played Palm Island and I like it enough to dive into Palm Laboratory. On a separate note, I do want to comment that Palm Laboratory doesn't work. The game plays in the palm of your hand, but it works for Palm Island. I feel they should have done something with hand instead. I mean, we're talking about Frankenstein here. There's things we could have done, from Frankenstein's hand to Can You Lend Me a Hand to one-handed. I don't know. There's a hand pun in there you could have done somewhere that would have made more sense. Lend me a hand, Frankenstein's hand. There's got to be something there. Someone in the comments below can come up with a good pun using hand, because Palm Laboratory only makes sense in the context of Palm Island. Otherwise it's not as cute of a pun. There's a good pun in there. I'm sure. Room and board. Chris George, you can come up with a pun. You apparently, I've watched your videos. You know how puns are structured, and other people don't. So you, Chris George, can do a pun on this game over here. Anyways, my inside jokes are too inside. Like, people who don't know what's going on here have no clue what's happening. From there you have a little kitty. Little, plush kitty, you can get that as well, which brings us to all the stuff you could have gotten, and therefore from there to will it hold its value, will it not? Overall, I'm not certain this one, and I wasn't certain the first time around. I'm not certain now either. They definitely have a lot more traction this time around than they did the first time. They have 1,600 backers, which is a good sign. Combine that with a deluxe version of the game, that is a good sign. At the same time, $60 for this game, giving you, and I feel some of the miniatures, the character meeple miniatures versus standees, I don't think those are essential. But I feel like the actual miniatures to hold your dice compared to what you get in the retail edition, I think those are a near essential upgrade, and so I feel like the game basically needs these to really stand out, and so it's hard to say for sure. I think there's a chance it holds its value, or there's a chance you're taking a $20 loss in the game, and it's not as much demand as you need it to be, and it sells for less than you pay it for. So definitely one I'm not confident of. I could see it hold its value, or I could see it not. So an unknown in this category. Which brings us to one more, and lastly, which is Puzzle Strike. And I really need this water again, because my voice is getting worse and worse as this video goes on. 800 backers, $90,000 raised, Puzzle Strike 2 from Sirloin Games. This is the first Sirloin Games game in a while on Kickstarter, on crowdfunding. The last one is Codex. They've done a whole bunch of games. For me, I played the original Puzzle Strike. I really like the original Puzzle Strike. I played the Flash Duel. They had that. I never actually dove into Codex. I read the rules 3 times, never managed to table it. But they have a whole bunch of games under their belt, under the umbrella. And Puzzle Strike 2 is the newest implementation, giving you very, very similarities to the original Puzzle Strike, but definitely a different game at the same time. So if you played the original Puzzle Strike, you might like this one. If you didn't like the original Puzzle Strike, you might not like this one. It could go either way, because while there are similarities at a high level, there are differences once you dive deep into it. Puzzle Strike 2 is, well, like the new version. They had Puzzle Strike, they had Puzzle Strike 3rd Edition, they had Puzzle Strike Shadows along with 3rd Edition, and those are both based on a chip building system. Puzzle Strike 2 is focusing much more on building up just levels of aggression that you hopefully survive through as you try to crash gems into your opponent, because that's the core concept of the game. The concept of the game is building up these gem crashes, where you're going to be crashing gem after gem after gem into your opponent, trying to overflow their meter. And the problem is the game escalates as you go through it, because what happens is your meter overflows and you start drawing more hands and cards, you start sending extra gems to your opponent. And so as you start making your enemy, your opponent, just a little more closer to death, basically, then they start powering up. And so suddenly they start powering up, and they start sending more gems to you, and you start powering up, and you have the sense of both powering up, both coming closer to death, while sending more and more aggressive turns, more and more aggressive gems towards your opponent. And it ends up with this back and forth where you just try to desperately survive every single round and hope you can make it one more round, while then turning around to your opponent and sending it to them. Now the game has a King of Token mechanism, in the sense that when you're playing with multiple players, although even at 2 players is true, but it's more, I guess, mindful of multiple players, in order to ensure it's not just, a target or whatever, you have one person who has a scepter, a physical scepter that we have somewhere over here, there we go, that physical scepter over there, that a player is going to have. They are the king, so to speak. They are the person who is the target. When they hurt other people, they hurt everyone else. Other people can only hurt them, but their scepter also allows them to power up. It allows them to power up every single round, putting gems into the power bar so they can activate their abilities. So the scepter makes you a target, but it also makes you stronger, and then like King of Tokyo, at the end of every turn, you can relinquish control of the scepter. You can say, it's out, I'm out, I've had enough, I think I'm going to die here, because a scepter, another thing the scepter does is it prevents you from preventing crash gems. In general, when gems are being sent to you, you have the option of preventing those gems, but as long as you have the scepter, you can't. You are too power hungry, you're too power mad, and so the game has a sense of escalation every single round, as you try to have the scepter so you can power up, but then you also don't want to die, so you're trying to be mindful of all these things as you go through the game. The game has a variety of different decks you can go through. The expansion adds 4 more decks. The base game comes with 2 core decks. The expansion adds 4 more decks. These are the core sets of cards you're going to be playing through as you go through it, so you have modularity even in the base game, but you have further modularity in the expansion, giving you 4 more decks to go through, and then you also have characters. Your starting deck's going to be a combination of some basic cards, plus 3 specific character cards that are giving you your feel or, spin to your character and how they operate within the game. These are all some similarities are going to be from the original Puzzle Strike, some are totally different, like the scepter and the whole aspect, and then these are some gems, and they're focusing heavily on the fact that these are real photos, which is relevant, because if you see any prototype coverage of the game, you'll see that the gems are not the same. They use more standard gems you'll find in a lot of games, and they're heavily focusing on the tactile nature of the scepter, the tactile nature of the gems, and all that in this game. I love the original Puzzle Strike. I haven't had it in a long time, but I love the system of the original Puzzle Strike. It's a game that I keep wanting to get back. This one, the art isn't doing for me quite as much. It's clearly it's one of those interesting things that this is clearly one of those many times we have a matter of different tastes and opinions, because there's a lot of people who are back in this game. We have 800 people back in this game. A lot of people seem to be totally fine with it. But then I know that I've seen, like on Rado's video, I saw a lot of comments that echoed my sentiments, which is I feel like I'm holding like a kid's toy for the scepter, and then the art feels like more of a kid's game. So everything's a matter of taste here, and doesn't work for me quite as much in terms of the new art style that they went with the game, although I'm happy that it works for others. As far as pledge levels, actually, one more thing before we do pledge levels, scrolling down to the stretch goals. And this is kudos to Sirloin Games for the approach they're taking over here, because they are being very transparent on multiple counts. So first of all, they have, and transparency is always good, but you'll see what I mean. So at the beginning of it, they talk about stretch goals. He talks about how, basically, here are the stretch goals we would have, but we want to include those off the bat. So basically, here's what we would have done. We're going to make the game fully stretched, but here are the stretch goals. Now, this is something that a lot of campaigns do take the approach of, hey, we're giving you the full game from the get-go on day one. What I like about what Sirloin Games has done here is they're doing that, but they're also showing you what the typical progression would look like. Like, here's a game we could have produced, and here's the things we would have added as we went to make it more and more deluxified and better. So it's giving you both the fully stretched on day one, while also, giving you the sense of progression along the way. And then secondly, the exclusives. This game does come with 2 exclusive characters. If you get the game at retail, you will not get those exclusive characters, but he's also being transparent that, hey, we don't believe exclusives are good for the economy, for the general game economy. We want people to be able to track them down if they want to, so we will offer these extra characters either at conventions, maybe at a web shop. They will be available, but you will have to track them down otherwise. So you, the backer, you're getting them for free, and you're not having to worry about them being in stock, out of stock, at a convention, on our store. You don't have to worry about the hows and whys. That's what you get. Are they exclusive to you, the backer? No, they're not. But you will have them for free, and you will not have to worry about tracking them down. And again, I like that direct transparency. There's none of this language of, trying to be mitigated of maybe it's exclusive, maybe we'll do this, maybe. It's being fully transparent. We're not making this exclusive, but here are the reasons why you should still get that. I appreciate and enjoy that direct transparency. But with that, let's go ahead and look at the pledge levels. Pledge levels is going to be $70 for the base game, and then $100 for the base game plus expansion, which is a lot. You're getting a lot of gems here, and you're getting a nice little scepter over there, but at the end of the day, that does make Puzzle Strike 2 a $70 game for a deck building experience, and that's before you get the expansion cards. If you want the expansion decks, if you want that, it's going to earn you $100. $100 is a lot for the amount of gameplay you're getting here, so that's a bit of a tough one over here. And this is where we start moving into the will it hold its value category. I am skeptical that it will. I just think that this is a big ask, and honestly, this is also pulling back from the original Puzzle Strike. The original Puzzle Strike, much as I enjoyed it, was a game that didn't do a great job of overall holding its value. It's a game that had a lot of people, like myself, who were passionate about the game, but then a lot of people who are more middling on the game. The reviews of it are good, but not amazing, and so I think this is going to fall into a similar category. I think it's going to deliver on many fronts for many people, but I think the price point, combined with the art, combined with the fact that there's 800 backers and not 2,000 backers, I think that all contributes to a game that I do not think will hold its value in the secondhand market. I think you'll be able to sell it. For sure, you can always sell anything. The question is for how much. So I think if you get this game, your options as far as getting a Kickstarter, Kickstarter will not be cheaper. Kickstarter will give you all these extras and whatnot. Your options are retail or the secondhand market, and I think the secondhand market will be cheaper even if retail is not. And that is overall Puzzle Strike 2nd Edition, which brings us to the picks of the week. Picks of the week, which is 2 picks of the week, one for my favorite game of the week, and one for my value pick of the week, the game I think will hold this value the most. And for those, we have Skytear Horde as my favorite game of the week. This one narrowly beating out Yucatan. I gave both of them 4s out of 5s, but Skytear Horde feels more different than other games I have in my collection, and so that's why it's my pick of the week. No other game, I think it's one of my testimonials here. I have like 7 testimonials on the page over here. It feels like a Starlo, no, not that one, not that one. One of my testimonials here talks about how it feels different than anything else I have in the collection, and I mean that. It's really solid and feels different from almost anything else I have in my collection. Nothing else I have gives me the exact same feeling as Skytear Horde. The closest thing I have is going to be Marvel Champions, that sense of having enemies and minions slowly heading your way, trying to fight them off. So there is some overlap in that sense, but as far as the game system, it feels very different, very unique, very tactical, lots of puzzly. I enjoyed it both solo as well as enjoyed it 2-player. Skytear Horde is definitely my pick of the week as far as my favorite game here, or the one I'm most looking forward to. From those I played, not played, just general looking forward to. As far as value pick of the week, value pick of the week is going to go to Final Girl Series 2. I think this one is the most likely to hold its value. It's not cheap. Value pick of the week is not the game that's the cheapest. That would go to like Boba Mahjong or Adorablins or whatever. The value pick of the week is the one that I think is the most likely to hold its value, the one that I think there's the most reason from a financial stance to get it on Kickstarter compared to getting it anywhere else, and that definitely goes to Final Girl Series 2. I think this one is the most likely. The combination of a hyped game, the 6,000 backers who are seeking it down, the 18 days to go. This is going to cross 8,000 backers. This might cross 1.5 million. There's clearly a demand here. It's clearly a well-loved game, and there's exclusive content. Combine all that together, and I think this is a safe bet for holding its value. And that is basically it. Until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Thanks for bearing with me. It's a long video, but it's been a while. This is the first one in a while, so we're catching up. There will likely be a 2-back or not back next week. We shall see, but there's always going to be something here. Every single day, all the time. As always, have a good one. Which is a reminder, a reminder that if you are a patron, or if you want to become a patron, head on over to Patreon, where I have the Unfair and Unbalanced video, where I sit there and try to convince you to back none of these games, to save you money on every single last one. It's a Patreon regular series that I put out over on Patreon specifically, where I take an aggressive anti-FOMO stance of trying to convince you not to back all the games to save you money. So you can check that out over on Patreon. Trust me, it pays for itself. Past that, I just want to show one other thing here. We have Wardle, okay? So I'm about to ruin your life here, in case you don't know what this is already. Wardle is a thing I discovered a week ago, and I have been doing this. Fortunately, they only do one a day. So no matter what happens, you only could do one of these a day, which is nice, because otherwise I'd be doing this all day. But it's a ward game, okay? And here's how the ward game works. For the record, I'm about to spoil today's, but that's fine, because today for me is Sunday, which means by the time you see this, there's a new one, so you can check that out. But I'm going to go ahead and spoil today's, and you can never go back. You can't go back. It's once a day and it's over. So the concept of Wardle is you go ahead and you punch in a ward. So I'm going to go ahead and punch in search over here, okay? Search is not a ward. Search is not a 5-letter word. We're going to type in Kemet. Is Kemet a ward? It's fine as Kemet's a ward. Kemet has 2 E's. I shouldn't do that. We're going to punch in fried, okay? Fried. Then we're going to go ahead and enter. And now we see that there's one R in our word, and the R is in the wrong place. Okay, so let's go ahead and do rang? No, let's go with rungs. Okay, rungs. There we go. Nope, R is still in the wrong place. Ooh, there's an S. There's an S, okay? Okay, so now we have an S, we have an R, still in the wrong place. Let's go with so we have an O. We probably gonna need another letter there. So let's do this. Let's do Let's go back one. We can go there. Where's the O? No, there's no O. We don't know. We don't know any of the vowels. We don't know any of the vowels. Let's go with Salem. No, Salem is not it. We tried an I. We tried a U. Sauna has 2 A's. It's not good. We could try to go with a we need an A. We want to try an O in there. Let's go with boast. Boast, okay? We have the S in another column. Enter, boast. Oh, we have an O in the right column. We have an A. Okay, so we have an A. We have an S in the right column. So we could try to go with a S in the first column, O in the second column, because we know that. We know we have, we don't know what else we have. We have an R. Let's probably put the R at the end. Let's go with solar. Okay, solar. And we have, boom. There we go. That's solar. Okay, that is basically Wardle. Once per day, you get to go ahead and do this, and you can go ahead and just punch in a word and go through it. Yes, solo was yesterday's word, so I didn't ruin it for you. But you can go ahead and enjoy this now. I'll throw a link to this in the description down below. Basically, if you punch Wardle into your browser, you'll find it. And congratulations. I just wasted your time for 3-4 minutes a day for the rest of your life. Assuming this goes for the rest of your life. I don't actually know how this goes. By the way, just for the record, double letters are possible. It happened once. It was a really difficult day. But anyways, that is everything. Until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Whew. And have a good one.